So you've got one microphone and a full drum set. What is the best way to capture the lovely sounds of your entire drum set just using one microphone? Well, there's the typical way of just setting up the mic somewhere and recording the entire drum set all at once. But if you've got a little bit of time on your hands and you're willing to go through some trial and error, might I suggest recording all of your drum pieces piece by piece. Now, I'm not just talking about recording the sound of the snare hit once and recording the kick drum hit once and then copying and pasting that throughout the song. I'm talking about putting the mic near your snare and recording that whole song, listening to the song and recording it, and just playing the entire snare. Doing the same thing for the kick drum, the same thing for the hi-hat, the same thing for all the other pieces of the drums. This way you're at least getting some inconsistent sounds on the hits of each part, so that throughout the song it sounds slightly inconsistent and more like a human was playing a drum set as opposed to a robot copied and pasted the same exact sound over and over. Here's a comparison between these two methods. It's going to take some time and some trial and error because likely the microphone that you are using was not designed to record the cymbals and the snare drum and the kick drum. It's also a little difficult. It kind of messes with your mind a little bit as you're playing just one part. It just feels weird and slightly unnatural to do it that way. You'll notice that in some of these recordings I look as though I'm playing a full drum set and I'm only recording one piece. That's because it really does mess with your head a lot. So psychologically it just helps me to pretend as though I'm still playing everything else while just recording the one piece. So let's start with the snare. The microphone I'm using is the Blue Baby Bottle, and it is a very sensitive microphone, not ideal for loud instruments like a snare drum, especially up close. So let's try a couple of different positions with the microphone and see what sounds the best. You'll notice when the mic was really close to the snare, it had a couple of parts where it didn't actually clip. The waves, the audio waves didn't peak above 0 decibels, but it's just so impactful, that snare sound on this really sensitive mic, that it distorted the sound and didn't sound very good. So let's go with the one that was a little bit further away. I think that sounds the best with this mic. Now, you don't always have to start with the snare. If you want, you can start with the kick drum and do that first while listening to the metronome or the backing track or whatever you have. But I would suggest either the snare or the kick drum first, as it would be weird to start with, say, the floor tom, or you could maybe do the hi-hats first if you wanted, something that carries the beat a little bit more. Anyway, let's go on to the kick drum. Surprisingly, for this microphone, it sounds really good to put the mic above the drum shell pointed at the foot pedal beaters as it hits the drum head. Again, that's just with this particular microphone. You will have to kind of mess around with it and see what sounds best with your microphone. What I've discovered is with this microphone, it sounds best to keep it at a distance, maybe about a foot away. If I get too close, then it starts picking up some unwanted plosive sounds that just don't really work for me. All right, let's hear these recordings now all put together, and then I've added a couple of effects to the drums to mix them into the song that I recorded. I do want to point out the drum fills are probably the most difficult. You're really going to have to use a lot of brain power to get that to work. If you're just struggling with it, take a moment to think about just how many times you're actually hitting the drum. So there was an instance in this song that I recorded where I was really having a hard time going from the snare to the rack tom back to the snare. And I ended up realizing that the rack tom was just 4 quick hits. One of the difficulties of this also is that when you go back to mix the drums, you'll notice that the kick and the snare and the hi-hats, some of it just feels a little off. It's because you recorded them all separately. Even though you're listening to the same BPM in the metronome, it still is just kind of weird, and so you are going to have to kind of shift some things around, do some slicing and shifting around just to line them up a little bit better. And then you'll want to add some reverb to, say, a drum group track. Say have all the drums routed through like a group track and put a little bit of reverb on there and maybe some compression or something. It just helps all the drums feel as though they were played at the same time. But in the context of the song, when you hear the drums with the guitars or whatever other instruments you have, it really does, if you didn't know any better, you'd think it was just a fully mic'd drum kit, and that's kind of what we're going for here. Sentiment without them leaves this void wide open. Thank you for watching this video, and if you have not done so already and you feel so inclined, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I do have a lot of simplified audio mixing and recording tips just like this one, and if you're interested in hearing either of the songs that I featured in this video, you can watch either of them here. And that's it.